What is going on, guys? DragonTamerBlayde here, back from our Elder Scrolls Legends, another discussion video. A couple weeks ago, I put out a video called Let's Talk About Shouts, focused around mostly just how strong and, in my opinion, overpowered Drain Vitality is, as well as how underpowered a lot of the other shouts are. It was I don't want to say very controversial video, it's just, as with anything in this game, everybody has their opinion, so there's a lot of opinions going back and forth. And one of the biggest opinions I saw when I mentioned that I thought Drain Vitality needed to be nerfed, or Word Wall, one of the two, was Drain Vitality is the only thing keeping Hlaalu somewhat in line. And I didn't really talk about it too much in the video because I said I'd like to talk about it in another video, and that's going to be this video. But my opinion that I was leaving in the comment section was, I agree. Hlaalu is another story, and we'll talk about that when the time comes. So here is the time. Hlaalu is kind of one of the more unique, aggressive decks that we've ever seen in the game. There are many, many different builds of it. They all kind of hover around these two cards right here. Haunted Manor, getting as many of these guys up as possible, and Hlaalu Oathman. So we're going to start with talking about these two cards, but I want to talk about the deck as a whole first. It's a pretty amazing deck. So normally when you're playing against an aggressive deck, your goal is control the board, starve them of resources. Eventually they'll only be able to drop a 1/1 at every turn, and then at that point you've got the game, gain your health back, and you win. Hlaalu is different. They bring that initial early game pressure that kind of just beats you in the face and drops your health super quickly as you're struggling, kind of getting knocked back, trying to get back into the game. The only problem is Hlaalu has so much draw. You normally at turn 4, 5, 6, when aggro decks start running out of resources, and if you survived up to that point, you can turn the tide and win. Hlaalu still has a full hand. They have a full hand, they have a full board. Occasionally they have Haunted Manor out. So that's what makes them super unique, is they don't run out of resources. They have tons of card generation, card draw, just tons of different ways to keep their resources stocked up so that they don't run out. And that's what makes Hlaalu pretty unique. So this is my Hlaalu deck that I'm usually running. But let's talk about these two cards down here. So Haunted Manor, 3-cost support, gives the second creature you summon each turn +2/+2. And this is stackable, so if you get 3 of these babies out, second creature each turn gets +6/+6. If you haven't already won, you won at that point. I don't think I really need to explain how powerful this card is. It was a card that when it was first revealed, I think everyone was like, I mean, sounds pretty good, but is it really worth that cost? Yes. Yes, it's worth that cost. And then you kind of mirror that card up, which, remember, Haunted Manor is a Hlaalu card, so it is all 3 colors at once, which is relevant for this next card, Hlaalu Oathman, where if you have an agility card in play, you're going to gain 3 magicka, and if you have a strength card in play, you draw a card. So in a perfect world, if you have a Haunted Manor out, or with your plethora of 2-drops on turn 3, let's say you used the ring on something turn 1, and then played something turn 2, turn 3, if you have a red and a green out, you're going to gain 3 magicka and draw a card, which means for the cost of 3 magicka, or if you consider the agility gaining you 3 magicka offsetting Hlaalu Oathman's cost, you're getting a potential 0-cost 2/2 body that draws you a card, which is already absolutely crazy. But then you pair it with some of these other cards like Haunted Manor, where now Hlaalu Oathman is a 2/2 creature. It takes the place of the first creature you summon that turn, so then now you have your full magicka to summon your next creature, which will now get buffed by Haunted Manor, and you're drawing a card in the process, so that Hlaalu Oathman didn't cost anything besides just having cards on the board. I don't think I need to explain how powerful that is in an aggro deck. And then you just couple it with a bunch of other crazy cards. The Firebrands, Marked Man kind of buys you a little bit of time, gives you a free 0-cost activator creature, which will help you with your Haunted Manors. You got 5th Legion trainers or clan captains buffing all the creatures that you're attacking, Skulks to fish out your Firebrands, Pawn Breakers for more value, and then draw. Tons of draw. Thieves Guild Recruit. Crusader's Assault, Hlaalu Oathman, Ash Berserker, Ulfric's House Carl. That's like, what is that, 18 different ways to draw a card? Just in an aggro deck, and not counting things like Pawnbroker, which while not drawing a card in the general sense, it's still adding cards to your hand. Crusader's Assault's drawing 2 cards most of the time anyway. It's crazy the things this deck can do. Now here's the problem. Yes, Drain Vitality is one of the few things keeping this deck online. Although, if they get that turn 2 with the Ring Haunted Manor out, if you don't have support removal, a lot of the times Drain Vitality stops being as useful. So yes, Drain Vitality is one of the few things keeping this deck in line. But Drain Vitality doesn't always even keep this deck in line. But the problem I have, where yes, I feel like this deck is, not that it's too powerful. If it couldn't keep its resources completely stocked up, I would say I have no issues with the deck whatsoever. You deserve to push that amount of damage with the way this deck is built. You should be pushing that amount of damage. That's the way an aggro deck works. But when you couple the amount of damage this deck can push with the amount of cards it can draw, it kind of becomes a crazy catch-22. And then you factor in that some, not all Hlaalu decks, like I mentioned, there's so many different ways you can build one of these. There's Lower Canton Smiths, Steel Scimitars, all this crazy stuff. But some Hlaalu decks run Tully's Conscription, where let's say you even manage to actually finally drain your Hlaalu opponent of resources. They just drop a Conscription, and not only is Conscription going to fill their board for 1 card, which is crazy, it's going to drop a bunch of things like 5th Legion Trainer, which is going to buff every subsequent card that comes after it. Bunch of charge on the board, and if you've got mana up, things are getting buffed. Ambitious Hireling is one of the best cards for Hlaalu. If you drop Ambitious Hireling as the card that gets buffed with Haunted Manor, you'll also hand that buff to another creature, so you're getting double the buff from Haunted Manor. It's just crazy the things that Hlaalu can do. Now, where I kind of feel we run into a catch-22 is, it's kind of like, well, I'm going to compare it to Tribunal Control, but I want to preface this by saying I don't think Tribunal Control is anywhere near as powerful as Hlaalu is right now. But there's a point in time before the Manticore nerf where I think a lot of people were talking about how, I don't even want to say the word was good, but oppressive isn't the right word either. But just kind of how restrictive and how unfun Tribunal Control was to play against. And I agree with that sentiment. Tribunal Control is a very unfun deck to play. It's how it's designed. It's designed to be an anti-fun control deck. Just removes everything. But every time I've talked about Tribunal Control with somebody, I always said, I hate the deck, but there's not one single card in that deck that I can say is too overpowered on its own, like in a vacuum. I don't like to always judge cards, and this is some of the trouble I have with Drain Vitality. I try not to judge cards on how well they pair with other cards. I don't think it's a fair judge of the singular power level of the card, but sometimes you have to. So Drain Vitality is one of those rare examples where you have to compare it coupled with Word Wall and Greybeard Mentor, because it's the way to maximize how strong that card is. But Tribunal Control, when you look at the whole list, like, it runs the Edicts of Azura, it runs Dawn's Wrath, it runs Marak, it runs the Javelins, it runs Sorcerer's Negation, it runs Firebolt, it runs Lightning Bolt, it runs everything. Like, you name the removal, that deck runs it. So when you couple all of that together, yes, it's hard to ever keep anything on the board, and eventually they just start playing these huge creatures. But what card do you pick out as the issue? Edict is balanced on its own, it always has been. Javelin's balanced on its own, and that's how I felt about the whole deck. I'm of the camp that I didn't think Manticore needed to be nerfed. Obviously, the data says otherwise. I don't have access to that data, obviously. But if the data says otherwise, then I'm inclined to believe Direwolf and whoever else interprets that data. But I kind of feel the same way about Hlaalu. So, just scrolling through my list, and again, I'm sure there's tons of other lists out there that pop out one card, pop in one card. But, like Firebrand, Markman, you're going down this list, and I can't hit one that I would even say, let's discuss how balanced it is, until you come all the way down to... And there's not even any giant bat reanimation here, but until you get to Haunted Manor. I think that's the first card out of the version that I run that you could even attempt to make an argument for being unbalanced. I could see there being an argument for +2/+0, since it's an aggressive card. I saw that mentioned on Twitter before. I could see the argument for making it non-stackable, although the card would get way worse. I could see the argument for that. But I think in a vacuum, Haunted Manor is fine. It's just, again, like I said, where Hlaalu is constantly restocking itself. Then you look at Hlaalu Oathman, where, yes, this is an incredibly valuable card, but all of the Oathmen are incredibly powerful. It just so happens that Hlaalu Oathman is the cheapest one, and it has a huge payoff for this specific deck. So playing a different Hlaalu deck, Hlaalu Oathman is still going to be really good, but I don't think it would be viewed as problematic as Hlaalu Oathman is being viewed now. So you can look at these two cards, and I think Hlaalu Oathman is just... I think people are down on him because of how powerful the deck overall is. Haunted Manor, I think there's a legitimate argument to be had here, but I still lean on the side of mostly balanced overall, but I can see where it gets broken once they start stacking. And again, the biggest issue I have with Haunted Manor is that Hlaalu never runs out of cards. So then you can say, alright Blade, let's look at the card draw. Thieves Guild Recruit's been around forever, it's a normal card, it's really not crazy powerful, it's just a good card. Crusader's Assault, we know, is a crazy card. It's one of the reasons why Crusader's always been difficult to deal with since this card dropped. It gives you a buff, which is great. It gives you Breakthrough, which is great for an aggressive deck. And it potentially draws you 2 cards. I think that card's pretty fine on its own, because a lot of the time you're going to be sacrificing one of your creatures to use it or doing other things. It's just a good card. Ash Berserker, we know, is a crazy card. Another one that I don't really think is broken, probably one of the strongest cards from the expansion, but it's a pretty weak statted 4-drop in terms of health. The end of each turn drawing you a card is pretty significant. Like if this card read at the start of your turn instead of at the end of your turn, I still think it would be able to be run, but I don't think it would be run anywhere near as much. Being able to guarantee a trigger of it makes it even better. But I don't think you can adjust this card, and then Ulfric's Housecarl has already been adjusted. At one point it was viewed as too powerful. And that's just the amount of draw that I run in my deck. There could be even decks that run more. I run Shadow Shift as well. I could easily cut this for something else like a lower Canton Smith. So I think Hlaalu kind of suffers from a similar problem that Tribunal Control ran into, but as, like I said, Hlaalu is a much stronger deck. So, I've talked about this before, and I not on video as much, but in the comment section of that Shout video, if Drain Vitality gets nerfed, and I'm not saying it is, I'm not going to talk about whether I think it should be or not, I've already said I think it should be, but if Drain Vitality is nerfed, I think this Hlaalu deck needs to see some sort of nerf as well, just to bring it back in line. Other aggro decks, you were able to kind of survive until you got to your Ice Storm, or if you were feeling froggy, running Firestorm. And then at that point, if you drew that card and you were still alive, you usually won the game. Even against crazy strong, more aggressive decks like the Midgrow Warrior, if you drew your Ice Storm and got to play it, you usually got to win. Hlaalu is kind of the first deck we've seen that doesn't follow that aggro rule in this game. So if Drain Vitality gets nerfed, I think Hlaalu needs to be looked at with it. There's 2 other cards that kind of stick out to me as on their own just being really good, but being crazy when paired with other cards in the game. Maybe I'll make videos on those as well, but just to kind of bring it up to you guys as talking points in case you guys want to see those videos, or if you guys enjoy these kind of talking videos. I think 2 of the biggest cards that we need to keep an eye on for the future that could potentially be breaking games or making broken decks is Talaisa's Conscription, which I'm not convinced that Talaisa's Conscription is broken. I still think it's pretty balanced. It feels very bad to lose to, but I'm in the camp of I can see the argument, but I'm leaning towards balance for Talaisa's Conscription. The other card that I think we need to keep an eye on at moving forward would be Ulfric's Uprising. It's a card that I think most people kind of just glanced over as being not good enough. But as decks are starting to build around Ulfric's Uprising, we're starting to see how crazy the card is. And as more and more powerful summon effects are getting printed, I think Ulfric's Uprising is very dangerous to the game. I still kind of lean the same way as I do with Conscription for Uprising, where I'm leaning towards mostly balanced at the moment, but as new cards are printed, I could see this card becoming broken. So maybe we'll make a video talking about those two in the future. I just wanted to talk about Hlaalu a little bit, where I think it's kind of a conundrum if I were to be balancing the cards. I would look at Haunted Manor, maybe, but more so it's kind of like, how do you limit the draw? Because none of the cards that draw deserve to be nerfed. But I think the deck overall is too powerful. It's one of those, like, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts for this deck. I think that's the best way to describe Hlaalu, in my opinion. But I'm definitely interested to hear your guys' opinion. I'm sure this will be a fiery comment section like the Shout video was. As always, you guys do a pretty great job of keeping it civil down there. So let's keep it civil for this one as well. Obviously, not everyone's going to agree with each other, so let's have some fun debates in the comment section below. I want to hear your guys' opinion on Hlaalu and how it mirrors or how it aligns with a potential Drain Vitality nerf in a theoretical world where if Drain Vitality is on the potential nerfing block, how do you think Hlaalu plays into that as well? I want to hear all of your guys' opinions on that stuff. But that's going to be it for now, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this little chat. If you guys want to hear more videos like this where I kind of just talk about things either in the meta or in the game as a whole, let me know. I kind of have fun doing them, so I want to do more in the future. But yeah, thank you all very much for watching. I'm DragonTamerBlayde, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.